Exciting. Live stream. Today we're talking about why living in Charlotte has become impossible. And specifically, we're going to answer the question, has Charlotte grown too big too fast for its own good? Because the prices, the traffic, nonstop construction, crowds, everybody can feel that the city has changed quite a bit in the last few years. But some of the latest numbers coming out hide a twist that many locals and people watching the market closely haven't caught quite yet. And so we're going to be breaking down today what a starter home really costs right now, the tax bill that caught owners off guard, where all the newcomers keep coming from, a commute that ranked near the country's worst, the apartment glut that is doing the opposite of what was expected, and also whether to buy now or wait it out. So if you're thinking about moving to Charlotte, watch this before you commit one way or the other. And getting into it, let's talk about the first part. Has Charlotte actually become impossible, and how so? So Charlotte was supposed to be the affordable city. A lot of people aren't so sure anymore. And there was a huge reputation, especially when we talk about like Sunbelt cities. There's a reputation that all these cities down here, right? Atlanta, Nashville, Charlotte, a lot of these Sunbelt cities, even going as far west as Dallas, are super affordable. And at one point they were. However, today the cost of living has risen substantially. And so currently in Charlotte, we do have a cost of living, the index of 95.7, meaning that we're about 4% below the median cost of living for the US, which is still pretty good. But compared to what it was 10 years ago, right? This is the median price of a single family home in Charlotte. It was about $200,000 10 years ago. Now we're at like $450,000, $460,000 as of last month. And granted, seasonally, that's a little bit higher than, because, June is the most expensive month of the year, historically speaking, with somewhere between October and January being the most inexpensive. But yeah, so like we've seen cost of living go up substantially, and that's not changing anytime soon. So another stat, 51% of renters are cost burdened as of right now, which means half of people are straight up not having a great time. At least half the people renting. So impossible, what does that mean, and for who exactly? So one of the numbers that has come up a lot recently, again, we have a median home price right now of $450,000, $460,000 if we're looking at all property types of condos, single family, all that sort of stuff. It still is like $415,000, $425,000. Even just a condo here, it's at least $300,000, give or take. That's the median price. So you can find stuff for $200,000, you can find stuff for $400,000 or $500,000, but that's the median. For a townhome, $355,000, which again, you can find stuff for a whole lot more. You also you can find some stuff, but not a whole lot of stuff for a whole lot less. So with that sort of a median price, what does it actually take in terms of income to be able to afford a home? Well, the median income in Charlotte, North Carolina, is for a household about $82,000. If you're looking specifically at Mecklenburg County, it comes out to $90,000. I don't know if it shows here, it doesn't show it there, but it's about $90,000. And I think it's $90,000 and change. It's just over $90,000. But in order to be able to afford one of these homes here, that's $415,000, right? If we go to a calculator, so we'll go to calculators. If you take the average numbers for Charlotte, which will say annual insurance, it depends, but especially if it's not a super old home, about 0.4%. If it's in Mecklenburg County, we'll say 0.78% annual taxes, and we'll say middle of the road, $50 HOA. Sometimes you got no HOA, sometimes it's a lot more than that, but we'll just say middle of the road. If you had a $415,000 home, and let's say that you are putting down, again, we'll say middle of the road. Some people put down 20%, some people put down 3%. We'll say about $40,000 down. At a 6.5 interest rate, which right now we are seeing a little bit better than that, we'll say 6%, because there's also things we can negotiate to help reduce the cost. That's $2,800 a month with everything. So principal, interest, taxes, and HOA, hazard insurance, mortgage insurance, all together. You're looking somewhere around $2,800 a month. Now, lenders, and also just for your own benefit, like what is a safe financial decision is going to be more conservative than what a lender will give you. But if we're looking at the calculator, $2,800 a month, you want to be at no more than 35% DTI, that'd be $8,000 a month. So that would be an annual household income of about $96,000. And if you want to be real conservative, 2,800 divided by 0.25, that would be $134,000. So you want to be somewhere between $95,000, $135,000 in order to afford a middle of the road kind of home. And so that's really tough for a lot of people, especially when the median household income is $82,000 in the entire metro and $90,000 in Mecklenburg County specifically. And so how recently was this still genuinely a cheap place to buy? Well, again, you go back even to 2020, and the median price, depending on what you were looking at, was somewhere in that $250 to $280 range. So it's almost doubled in about 5 years, which is insane. And so is it still cheap relative to the rest of the US? Yes. Is it nearly as cheap as it used to be? No. And that's true many places. That's kind of the story across the entire US right now, but it's definitely the story here too. So starting with the thing that everybody, the cost everybody feels the most first, what does it actually cost to put a roof over your head? Because a starter home here used to mean a starter price, and that's not the case so much anymore. So if you're buying, what does a typical Charlotte home actually cost to buy? Like I said, the current median price is $4.25 for all properties. If you're looking specifically at single family, I think it's getting cut off by my camera here. Let me see if I can. Option. And again, this is up from back 5 years ago, median was about $310. Now, if you're renting, is renting any easier than buying right now? Absolutely. It is going to be cheaper to rent than to buy in the short term. So 1-bedroom apartment, depending on where you're at and what you're looking for, it's going to be somewhere between $1,400 to $1,800 a month. The median rent in Charlotte is $1,400 and $1,418. And so as those rents go up, who's actually getting squeezed the most? Well, primarily low-income renters, which is one of the reasons why the city has been putting a lot of emphasis on more income-based housing and more affordable rental options as well, especially for a lot of the people that work in the city in service jobs and that sort of stuff to give them a place to live. But the sticker price is only half the story. The other half shows up on your tax bill and on your paycheck. So there's a little bit of a squeeze here that can compound, which is one of the reasons why owning costs more than just the sticker price. So if your home's value goes up and your salary didn't, you are going to see your expenses go up and your salary not go up. So property taxes here are calculated as a straight percentage of the value of the home. In Mecklenburg County, that is roughly 0.77, 0.78% of the value of the property. So let's say, again, we're looking at a median home price of, we'll say $415,000. That means your tax bill is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $270 a month, give or take, Also depends on where you're at, but just as a middle of the road number. Something, it can be less than that, it can be more than that. But that's roughly what it will be. So every 4 years, Mecklenburg County reappraises the properties, and based on the value of those homes, then comes up with a new tax bill each year. And then every 4 years, they adjust everybody's values and then match the property tax rate to balance the budget. So they take all the money that, basically they take all the budget for the entire county and city, and then they divide it up to everybody according to your property values. And so when that happens, some people see their tax bill go up, other people will see it stay relatively the same. And if it does go up, you can always fight it. But the interesting thing is your tax rate will go down. So the next property reappraisal date is for this coming spring. If you are purchasing right after that, we will see a drop in the property tax rate when that occurs, because all the property tax values will go up, but whatever you purchase it for is your property tax value when you purchase it. So you will be paying relatively less tax compared to other people versus if you're 3 years into the reappraisal cycle. Hopefully that makes sense. We have seen some modest growth in the income here in Charlotte. So again, $82,000 household income for Charlotte. There's $90,000 household income in Mecklenburg County in particular. And the living wage here is about $25 an hour, which is accounting for, if you have a little bit nicer than median place, so like $1,500 a month rent, then roughly a third of your income would be going to housing. Now, prices and taxes climb for a reason. That reason shows up at the county line every single day, because we have 157 people that have moved here yesterday and the day before and the day before that and today and tomorrow. And so how fast are people actually pouring into the Charlotte region? Over 20 or about 21,000 people move to the city every single year. And these are people that are coming from everywhere. So the number one state is people that are moving here from New York. But we also have a lot of people that are moving here from across the country and across the globe. About a half of people that move to Charlotte are international, 49% to be exact. And one of the comments that you'll see in the YouTube section all the time is that, hey, we're full. North Carolina's full. Charlotte's full. And it is true that we are, just like when you eat a meal, you're full. The next day, digest another 157 people. The city's growing really fast. It's insane. We're the 14th largest U.S. city, and Charlotte wasn't really on the map 10 years ago. It's kind of insane. It's really insane. Or 20 years ago. Like, very few people had been here. They kind of knew it existed, but that was about the extent of it. And so to grow almost 5x in 20 years, 30 years is unprecedented. And in fact, when you look at the growth rate, because you see the rate of growth has gone up. It used to be 117 people a day, and now it's 153. And before that, it was like 80 people a day. And so because the rate of growth has gone up, the city has tried to plan for that growth, but you can only plan ahead for it so very much. Because all the planning they did for expansions on transit, roads, all that sort of stuff 2-3 years ago were based off of the growth numbers then, not the growth numbers today, and it has continued to grow not only at the same rate, but at double the rate, which nobody could have foreseen. And so also when you have so many people moving to the same place, using the same roads, something's gotta give, and it's difficult to get around. It's hard to get anywhere these days. Let me show you some of the traffic that we experience every single day. According to a study that I think was very, very biased, Charlotte has the second worst commute in America. It was a pretty biased study in my opinion, but that same study said that we had an average 28-minute commute, which is probably about right. I'd say there's some people that commute more than that, but a lot of people are somewhere in that 15 to 20, 25-minute range for sure. So, where does it choke the worst? Right now it is 3 o'clock, so a lot of the traffic, the real traffic, hasn't started yet. But up in Huntersville along I-77 going into Cornelius and Davidson, 77 always has traffic. Going southbound, the south side of 77 also almost always has traffic. You will always see dark red right here at the I-85, 485 intersection, because there's this horrible, like, 4 lanes merge down to 1 and then merge into an already congested corridor. And so there's that, and then also the 277 loop sometimes has some real crazy traffic, and then also 485, the south end. It's fine right now, but during the peak of rush hour, it gets real slow some days. Especially with the express lanes now, because a lot of people use the express lanes but then decide not to, and then it backs up. So the worst though overall is definitely at rush hour, and you see that with the 74 stint coming off of where it breaks from 27 and then keeps going southeast towards Monroe. There's another stretch that you see a decent amount. This past fall, we did vote to increase the sales tax rate by 1 penny, so 8.25%, to fund a $19.4 billion transit plan. 40% of that's going to go to the roads and improving pedestrian traffic and roads and all that sort of stuff. 40% is going to rail expansions, and 20% is going to the bus network and increasing the number of routes and frequency of those routes. For the trains, they're building out the Red Line, which is going to go from uptown Charlotte up to Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, and eventually Mooresville. And then the Silver Line, which is going to give service from Charlotte Douglas International Airport to uptown and eventually beyond towards Matthews, as well as beyond the airport towards Belmont. But at least to start, they're doing the airport to uptown. But it's not just the rail. Let me try that again. English. But it's not just the light rail and roads that are going up. We also got to look at the skyline too, because construction is booming here. There's cranes on just about every corner. But why does it feel like it's not enough? And you see this driving through anywhere. Like, you will see cranes everywhere. If Charlotte had a bird, the bird would be a crane. Because they're building everywhere. And in fact, there was 4,700 new apartment units that opened in Q1 of 2025, which is 3x the normal rate. 19,000 were delivered in 2024. And the interesting thing is that all the supply you would think would be giving renters a break. And it is true that we have seen for 0 to 2 bedroom apartments, so like a studio, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom apartments, we've seen the steepest fall in over a decade, but it was only about 1% year over year. So that means on average, if you were paying $3,000 last year, you're paying $2,970 this year, or $2,950 this year. So it's a little bit, but is not much of a difference. And so if they're building this much, why does it still feel like it's impossible for the rents to fall? Well, because we got that many people that are moving here. The pipeline of people that are coming here is not slowing down. However, the pipeline of new units that are coming online, because of some of the uncertainty that there seemed to be, particularly last year, a couple of years ago, the number of new housing units being started is down 40%. So we have a shortage, a massive shortage of housing units, both about 40,000 affordable homes and affordable rentals were short, and also just short on housing in general. And so all of that, the people, the traffic, the building lands in one place. What a home here is actually worth and whether you should buy one. Because what does all this mean for real estate values? Well, this is one of the things that a lot of people don't expect and don't really understand. The market has cooled substantially from where it was 5 years ago, but it still is not cold by any means. So one of the indicators we look at all the time is the months of supply. And so if I show you here specifically for the Charlotte MSA, 10 years ago, the quote unquote good old days, right? We were at 3 months of supply and it was going downwards. That's a downwards trend. So if I zoom out even more to the max, you'll see that the true glory days of buying a house, we're back here in like 2012. And that was back when we were around 6 months of inventory, which historically, when you zoom out for the long term, is where it's technically a balanced market. There's enough buyers and enough sellers to go around, and nobody's particularly motivated. And so because of that, you have relatively stable and also relatively attractive housing prices. We've not seen that since 2012. Hasn't existed. So when you look at where things are trending, are we getting more inventory? Yes, we're up to 3.2 months. The last time we saw 3.2 months was, or I guess it peaked at 3.4. So the last time we saw that would have been 2015. And ironically, in 2015, inventory was falling, which means that at the time, we were seeing things start to appreciate faster and faster and faster. Right now, things are a little bit more flat in terms of appreciation, and we don't have enough housing starts to have a crash. That's another question I get all the time. It's not happening. Sorry, folks. But what we do have is one of the best buying opportunities that we've had in about 10 years, which is, it's a little bit tough if you're trying to sell. But if you're trying to buy, you finally have options, which you just didn't have a couple years ago, you didn't have 5 years ago, you didn't have unless you're going back close to 10 years, especially when it comes to negotiability and getting sellers to agree to things. Like I had 4 clients last year that bought their house $80,000 below value or more. Now, is that every deal? No. Those deals, we wrote a lot of offers, we waited a long time, and we had to find sellers that really needed to sell in order to make it happen. But for those particular clients, they got phenomenal deals. And that was not possible 2 years ago, wasn't possible 5 years ago. It was possible 10 years ago, but again, that was 10 years ago. And so going back to where the market's at today, instead of looking at the 30-year history, where's my median? Median sales price, there we go. So it is up to 460 currently. It is slightly above where we were last year, but the peak, so June's the peak every year. And you'll notice here, and you go back every year, 2024, June was the peak. 23, June was the peak. 2022, June was the peak. It's basically been flat the last 2 years. Now going into the fall, again, you see things start to drop off, especially like October, November, December, January. That seasonally is the best time to buy. And so it'll be real interesting to see what this winter, these winter months are looking like. But I also know it's tough, especially if you got kids in school. It's tough to move then, but if you're looking for a deal, statistically, it is the best time to buy. So overall, as we have a lot of these particularly new rental units coming online here in Charlotte, who does this help? Who does it not help? We are seeing, because renting is very attractive, it is going to be cheaper in the short term to rent versus buy. You are starting to see more leverage on the buyer side because you don't necessarily have to buy unless you find that right deal, right? You always have the option to continue renting. And there are enough sellers that need to sell, especially coming off of the summer months. Fun fact, that's one of the reasons why you see this seasonal decline every year after June. It's because a whole lot of people who needed to move, especially locally, went ahead and bought a home sometime between March and June, but they still got to sell their other house. They can't afford the 2 mortgages, at least not long term. And so as you get later in the year, there's more and more negotiability as people start to kind of freak out because they're like, wait, what if I can't sell my house? I can't keep paying 2 mortgages. And that's where you start to get that negotiability to find a really good deal. We are, again, still short 40,000 affordable rental units. Some of those new projects, I've covered this in other videos, so I won't bore you with it. Go watch the other videos if you're curious. Many of the new, especially larger master plan communities that are coming online in Charlotte, are all having at least a component of affordable rental options, and so that is cool to see. But there's only one question really that actually matters to you, which is when, for you, because the answer isn't right for everybody, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of answer, when is the right time to actually purchase, or more importantly, if you're thinking about moving to Charlotte, should you actually move here? And what to do if you're already committed, like maybe you accepted a job offer or something and you're committed for at least a while no matter what. Well, to answer the question, should you actually move to Charlotte? The honest math for a mover, if you're thinking about moving, if you are going to have a household income somewhere in the, if you have very little debt, if your household income is somewhere in the $95,000 to $130,000 range, you're going to have a lot of options. It's going to be comfortable. If you have a modest amount of debt already, you probably want to be making somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000 as a household. I love Toyota vehicles. I own my car almost in cash. I have it almost paid off because my dad growing up was like, have no car payment and the cheapest car you can possibly own that will not require repairs. And my Toyotas run forever and have no issues. I actually fun fact, I used to work for a subsidiary of Toyota. It was not the automotive part, it was the industrial part of Toyota. A lot of people don't know they've got a bunch of different business units. But Toyota makes the best car. It's a little bit more expensive than Honda, but it lasts way longer. And again, bang for the buck and trying to save as much money on a car payment as possible. Toyota, especially good used Toyota, is the way to go. And I have the receipts and the data to back that up. You can send me a message if you want more information. I'm always happy to talk about Toyota. It's one of my favorite things. Anyways, and also the other question. So if you are moving here from somewhere else, if you already got equity you're able to roll into Charlotte, it is going to save you a lot of money based on wherever you're coming from. So if you're coming from the Northeast, depending on where you're coming from, it is anywhere from 20 to 50% cheaper than the A-list cities like New York and San Francisco, or the more expensive states like New York or California. And you're still on average going to be substantially cheaper than both Florida and Texas, or Colorado, which are 3 of the other states we get a lot of people from. However, relative to the rest of North Carolina, Charlotte is the largest city by far in all the Carolinas, and so it is 18% more expensive than the rest of the Carolinas, which again, for a very nice B-list city is, I think, a pretty good deal. That's why I live here, though. I will say I'm a little bit biased, but that's okay. That's why I live here, right? If I didn't like it, I wouldn't live here, but I like it, so I live here. And also renting versus owning, a couple of quick tips, or just things I talk through every single day with clients to think about if you're on the fence or you're trying to navigate this. Because actually my parents are in the process of moving right now, and they're trying to navigate whether they're going to go straight into owning again or rent for a while. And there's a few things to consider, both in terms of lifestyle factors as well as in terms of the dollars and the cents, to see what makes you dollars and makes sense. So if you know you're committed to somewhere for the long term, especially if you're committed to living somewhere for at least 5 years, historically speaking, it has never made financial sense to rent versus own if you're going to be somewhere for at least five years. Again, I can, if you're curious about all the math on that, leave a comment. I'll make another video on it. But that, historically speaking, the rule of thumb is 5 years. Technically it's 4, but 5 is easier to remember. If you're committed for at least that long, it's going to make sense to rent versus, or to own versus rent. If you're committed for less than that, or you are uncommitted altogether, you're not sure if you're going to stay, whether that's because you aren't sure if you're going to like it, or you're not sure because you're not sure if you are actually going to, be sent somewhere for a job or something and actually be sent there for that long. There's two focusing questions that are really useful to ask to figure out what's going to make sense. So one is, are you likely going to stay in the same metro? If you're likely going to stay in the same metro, and second, do you need to use all of your debt to income ratio? So again, whatever you make in a month, so if you make 120K a year, I'm just using round numbers. So for a household that makes 120K a year, that's $10,000 per month, right? If you are able to spend, so at 10K a month on a 40% DTI, that'd be roughly $4,000 a month. If you're able to buy a home for, let's say, $2,000 and $2,500 a month when you buy it, and you're going to be able to stay there at least a couple of years, then you would be able to buy a couple of rental or buy another home, float both, rent out the first one, and be able to hang on to it. If that doesn't interest you, then you can rent and really see if you like the area. It just really depends on whether or not you like the idea of building long-term wealth, really, more than anything. And also for scripting, if we make this into a video, we need to definitely show people how the math works on this, because I know this is kind of heady, but the biggest trade-offs, I'm just reading through my notes right now. There's been a lot of talk about rates potentially coming down. If and when that does happen, you can quite literally see on this longer term graph here. We had honestly, it's kind of funny to see this too, because like at the time, remember the 07, 08, crash, or crash of 09? When you look at it on this scale, it's kind of crazy how small it looks. It was just a blip in time. And then 2010, 11, 12 happened, and then it was just back off to the races. But anyways, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. If we have, because we're so inventory constrained right now, if we see rates come back down, we're going to have a 2021 phenomena all over again. And it's much better to own when rates are very cheap than try to purchase, because then you're having to fight everybody else that also has very cheap rates. If you're just refining into a cheap rate, so you already have a mortgage and you're just refinancing that mortgage, it's a whole lot easier to be able to, you already locked in the price when rates were high, and then you're able to lock in the rate when rates are low. So, yeah, a few things to really think through. Drop your situation in the comments, or you can shoot me a DM at Lucas Roller on Instagram, just like my name, at Lucas Roller on Instagram. And if you'd like a breakdown of individual neighborhoods, I've got lots of videos of that. If you would like a personalized list of potential areas and homes that match exactly what you're looking for, I've made 4 versions of this quiz. This is version 4. Even if you took it previously, you might want to take it again. I put so much time into this. I put a lot of love into it. It's really helpful. You can scan the code or click the link in the description below to go check it out, take the quiz, and get a personalized list of 5 to 7, 5 to 9 areas that match exactly what you're looking for. I'm basing it off of hundreds of one-on-one consults that I've done, which incidentally, if you would also like to just go ahead and book a one-on-one consult with me, you can call, text, WhatsApp, that number right there. It is my phone. It goes straight to my phone. And you can also scan the code to go ahead and book a call with me directly. If you have any issue with any of the links, just text me. Text always works. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. I hope this is helpful. If you got ideas, questions, etc., drop them in the comments below. As always, until next time, my name is Lucas Roller, and I hope to show you around town.